school building committee recommended supporting a new building. And the reason we recommended a new build was because putting on an addition and renovating this building came to $36 million. And for $46 million, renovating this and putting on an addition really was not the optimal choice educationally. The size of the classrooms would still be below MSBA standards. The gym would still be below MSBA standards. The configuration of the building would still be the way it is now, which is not optimal for educational purposes. The new build gives us a lot more flexibility as a town. I'm sure many of you feel the same way I do. Our buildings are used all the time, all weekend, whether it's for sports, scout meetings, organizations. You know, we're very fortunate that the town is flexible with the buildings. And that's something that we kept in mind as we went through choosing a new design, making sure that it was accessible to the community. So once the price reached more than 75% of the new build, or approximately 75% of the new build, it was seen as prudent at that point to push forward with going for a new building. The school committee approved that, as did the Board of Selectmen. So that's the recommendation we put forward, and that's the study that we asked the architect to go forward. In January, MSBA is the Massachusetts School Building Authority. They're our partners. They're the ones who are giving us the money to go through with this building. They came out and decided it was actually quite unexpected. The MSBA does not just randomly make visits to towns, but they had some concerns. They were concerned that we were not building a large enough project. Is really one of the things they're concerned about. They wanted to be sure that we were not just letting this building go, so that we would then say to them, well, look, the building's falling apart, we need this money. They want to be sure that it was being maintained to the best of our ability. And they wanted to look into the special education classrooms and just the class, the spaces that were in the accreditation. And they also looked at the NEAS, the New England Association for Colleges, Schools and Colleges. NEAS is the committee that comes into town and they review your high school. And at the end of a 3 or 4 day process, they write up a report. They look at, I believe now it's 10 different areas. Is it 10 now?
Well, it was 7 when they came for this thing.
Right, so there are 7 different areas they looked at. The Georgetown Middle High School was cited for several areas. One was the spacing issue, because a lot of our classes in this building, as well as in Georgetown High School, are taught in various spaces. Kids are being taught in classrooms, kids are being taught in storage spaces, kids are being taught in closets, basement areas. They're just not conducive. We have a lot of interior rooms with no windows. Space-wise, they're much smaller than they should be. And so NEAS cited Georgetown for some of these problems. What else were they looking for?
Well, there are seven standards. So the good news was all 6 of the top standards, the teaching and learning standards, we all received commendation for their work. They can identify their issues. However, there was one standard, the Community Resources for Learning standard, which has to do with budget, has to do with long-term planning for technology, staffing, maintenance of buildings, long-term planning, size and space. And so that the school was fully accredited, but on warning for standard 7 only. Generally what happens is you have, if it's a building issue, you have 2 years to rectify those issues. And it's been 6 years for us. But we have to very often have to write reports on what progress we're making toward addressing the standards. And as long as you're making reasonable progress, we're generally happy. But every single report, they ask us to report on the status of the Penn Brook project, because one of the things that that project does is it moves sixth grade out of the middle high school, which would arguably free up space there. So that's the only thing right now that they're asking us to report on. Just keep us posted on the status of your vote. Getting the operating override last year also contributed to us not going to probation, because it showed that the town was spending, money on trying to rectify some of the issues. One of the biggest issues would have been a lot of program cuts and things at the middle high school that, were tricky, and the town, we're so grateful, was able to help us with that. And they did not put us in probation because they felt that the town was making a really good faith effort. But they're still concerned about if the project doesn't go through, what's going to happen at the middle high school. So they don't tell you they're going to put you on probation. They just say, in order to avoid being downgraded, you need to keep making steady progress. So it's just the one standard that we're on.
So what happened was, the MSBA decided to come visit all three schools. Actually, without warning. They called us up and said, we're coming. I believe it was the next day. And we met with them. We traveled through all three buildings and toured it. Some really wonderful things came about of those tours. Number one, they saw that we were not neglecting our buildings, that the buildings just had so many issues. We were doing all we could to keep up with them, but in good faith. They were not falling apart out of neglect, and that's very important. Their other largest issue was whether or not just removing the sixth grade from the Georgetown Middle High School would actually alleviate the space problems that they're having over there. They were concerned that perhaps our project of making this building K through 6 wasn't big enough, that maybe we ought to look at making this a K through 7 or a K through 8. Now, every time you bring a grade out, we're looking at another $5 or $6 million. So the last thing we wanted to do was look at a project of a K through 7 or a K through 8. So that's why we went to the town and said at town meeting that we would like to expand our study so we could examine making this K through 7, K through 8, and then what would happen with the space at the high school. And it was a really good study because we really were able to prove that by pulling out just the 6th grade, enough space would be left at the middle high school to alleviate the overcrowding, get kids out of closets, get them out of storage areas, put in a few windows, reconfigure things. And, there are other issues over there. The roof needs repairs, there's some water issues, but they're all things that can be handled. And it will really reconfigure the gym to bring the Georgetown Middle High School up to where it should be from all areas. This school, the new building that we're proposing, would be able to stay as a K through 6. Now, people have asked why you're bringing up K. Partly because it's educationally sound. I keep you in kindergarten, first grade. But the other reason is it's overcrowded at Pearly also. Kids are being taught in basement storage areas. So by moving the kindergarten up here, it frees up space at Pearly. There'll be space if the town wants to use it. People have thrown things out like doing a community center for citizens, for the elderly. The school would like to use it. They want to expand the preschool program. There's not going to be a lot of space left over, but there's enough that the town can be a little flexible about how it's used. So that just gives us a little breathing. So that's the background in why we're supporting a K through 6 school building. The other decision we had to make was the location. One choice would be to put it out on the fields that we have here. The other choice was to put it in the woods, which is the location we choose. By going through the faculty parking lot and out back is the location we chose for a number of reasons. One is it's the least disruptive during the school day. Everything will be handled out there. It just will not interfere noise-wise. It won't be a distraction. if we did a building on the fields, we literally would be taking over the fields. So for 3 years, all of the fields would be closed, and the kids would not only not have the fields, but they would not have their play area outside. So that was a consideration. And another large consideration is by building in the woods, we now have a shorter emergency, we can put in a short emergency access road. It's a driveway. It's one way, it's gonna be closed off, it's not for public use, but it's a way of getting emergency vehicles in. I mean, I'm sure all of you have been here at high traffic times. And it's tough to come up that hill and around. And we just felt like a larger building, having an emergency entrance exit was really a key component. So that was another large deciding factor. And another major concern was to get the traffic off of Elm Street. I mean, by building out in the woods now, we're able to take in, I think it's 75 more cars off of Elm Street. That's a huge amount. That should be enough to get all of the congestion out of there during the school time. We can queue around the building. There are an additional 60 parking spaces. There'll be parking out near the fields. I mean, there are going to be plenty of places now where people come up to the area that they can park. So that's pretty much where we're at now. Recently last month, the school building committee, the town, met with the MSBA at their final board meeting and got the approval to move forward with the schematic design for the building. So what that means is MSBA has said, yes, we like what you're doing, your design works, your spacing works, you've proved to us by just moving 6th grade out of middle high school, you're gonna have enough space out of there. The MSBA has done something else they've never done before. And they said to us, you really need to work on the high school. You just do. And we recognize that need, and we're willing to partner with you. They're willing to pay for approximately half of a feasibility study at the Georgetown Middle High School. We know the cost of a feasibility study is $85,000. This is incredible that the state's offering us this money. You know, there are things over there that need to happen, and regardless of whether MSBA steps in and helps or not, these things have to be taken care of. So for them to step up and offer to do it, we're just very fortunate. And you know, some people aren't seeing it that way, but you know, when someone says to you, I'm willing to pay for half of your broken down roof if you put a new one on, you don't say no, you say, okay, let's find the money if you're gonna pay for half of it. And they've put a stipulation on it that we have to pass at town meeting and then again at the vote to recommend or approve the new building. They're going hand in hand. They feel that if we're not going to support a new building, then they're not ready yet to support a town that isn't quite ready to commit to its educational commitment. Does that sound, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think just to clarify that they're tying, so there's going to be the vote for the school project, but then there's also going to be a vote for a feasibility study to finish the high school feasibility study. Carl and his group, as Ellie said, started one, but because of the language in the last warrant article, we really couldn't extend it as far as it would have needed to go to the schematic design phase. So what this money does is it allows us to finish the study so that we could come before the town in the spring and have an actual study, an actual real number. But if we don't pass the feasibility study and the school project at town meeting, then the deal doesn't happen.
Right, they won't support one over the other.
So if we said no to the feasibility study and yes to the school, that's a problem.
Well, why?
Because I think, Red, the reason, just going to all the MSBA meetings and listening to it, you know, I think they feel that in order for the Pembroke project to really be successful, then the renovations to the middle school, high school really also need to be And that's a much smaller project, you know, that.
Well, we
they're
don't know
talking-
that until the feasibility
Well,
study's
I
done.
think Carl had some original estimates, and it was, you know, I think we're talking about maybe between, again, that's why we did the study, but 3 to 5 million, half of which would be Georgetown's share. So the question at this point in time is, we don't know that until we finish the study, but I think they feel that those two things they go together. And that, you know, that's gonna make some people a little anxious, and we know that. But the MSBA really feels like, you know, this money that they're putting up too, they wanna make sure that it's money well spent, and it meets the community's needs in the short term and in the long term.
Doesn't it make, if they're saying, okay, great, we'll give you half of the 50 million, round numbers. But we're not gonna give, we don't do the feasibility study. If you don't sign up for the feasibility study, the $40,000, our half, or $42,500. But that's also saying, why am I gonna spend $42,500 if the town's not gonna spend another 3 to 5, or 2.2 million for the high school? So I'm gonna spend 40, that I may spend 2.5. So I'm gonna waste 40 if I don't agree to the 2.5. So isn't it all tied together? It's 50 million or 26 million, plus 40, plus 2.5. So I gotta sign up for the whole dotted line. The warrant article isn't written like that.
But the feasibility study is just to determine what has to happen in the amount.
But ma'am,
And then that, we won't even see that.
we've had, since I moved to the town, we've had 3 feasibility studies on this building by the same architectural firm.
No,
2 of them by but we've done this every year. We're back. So it's really not 26 million, it's 26 million plus 2.5 million plus 40,000. Is that, because if the feasibility study is about $5 million worth of work, we should be signing on the dotted line for $30 million.
That's not what I understood what you just said. What's on the ballot is gonna be half of the new school plus half of the feasibility.
But
That's it for the ballot.
But then you have, then if you do the feasibility study for 85,000, and I agree with you, the 26 million is our half for the school, 40,000 is our half for the feasibility study. We were just told the feasibility study is gonna show something like $5 million worth of work on the high school, somewhere around. Our half is 2.5 million. So our unfunded liability outside of the feasibility study in the 26 is $2.5 million that's still sitting out there. How are we addressing that? I mean, it's,
You can't address it in the fall, because you don't know what the dollar amount is.
you don't know what it
You
is.
can't put something in front of the town without a known dollar
We
amount.
did talk to them about that, Red, how tricky that is.
Yeah,
that
it's-
It's really hard for the town to, you know, sort of go after something that they really can't get their arms around.
right.
But the problem was, they won't approve the money, and I think we agreed, we wouldn't approve the money you wouldn't approve the money as a town if you didn't know what you were really gonna get
Right.
out of it. So it is,
But that's why I agree with this school. We need a new school. But why am I gonna agree to $40,000 that I don't know if I'm gonna get? But it's a gun to my head. If I don't spend the 40, I don't get the 26.
No, we know.
aren't you in that same situation right now, Red? Where the town approved a $720,000 outlay to do a study, half of which, of course, is Georgetown's share. If it doesn't yield a project, you're still paying that $300,000 back.
But I could look at this building, the lack of maintenance, and go, yep, easy, done deal. It was just common sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
now it's like, I can't look at that school and say $5 million. I don't know. I don't go on the
Well,
roof.
one
I
of
don't
the
do
things
anything
I
like
wanna
that.
make sure you know is gonna happen just for everybody here, because this has come up several times from the citizens. They've asked me about this. And George could probably speak to it, because George is one of the people I think of when I think of this, is when we took tours of the middle high school with the MSBA, and then after that, Tilly and George asked to have a separate tour, which I took them on, and they got to see some of the spaces, because to the average person, the high school does not look overcrowded. But if I take you on a little tour and I show you where we have these special education classes, you'd be like, wow. I mean, they're very creative spaces, but they're not appropriate spaces.
Saturday, we talked about
And yeah, I said I would be more than happy on Saturday if anybody wants to take a tour. Plus, Charlie and I and Mike Anderson are gonna take a virtual tour. And that's gonna go on cable, just because sometimes people can't come in, but they wanna see it. So we're working on a date for that. But I think if you come and you were to look, would you agree, George?
Oh, yeah, it's very eye-opening to me.
Oh, I believe the high school needs work, but if
But
it's
we
just
don't know how much
building,
work, 'cause we haven't got the
Right.
study.
I mean,
Seems
it's
like
not,
it's the
it's,
state
Well,
that's
you
sort
know-
of doing it, though.
yeah, it's this
It's
gun
not
to
like
your
our
head.
decision whether or not we can just move forward with the school.
And that's true.
So
That's-
the analogy of like holding the gun, yeah, that's kind of what it seems like.
But can we do, like you said, if you move one grade out, like you said up in Penn, Pearlie, can we leave K there and keep $5 million?
No.
Why
Because
not? You just said each
the
grade.
project's already been approved to move forward as it is. MSBA has said yes. We agree with you that moving kindergarten out of Pearlie is the right thing to do for educational reasons, and that's a commitment. That's the project that moves forward. The other thing I think that's important is,
I have a quick question.
okay, maybe later thinking.
How many students in the school?
About 530,
Yeah, we moved the kindergarten to sixth grade again. What do we,
770.
7,
The buildings, yeah, the buildings go for
so you're
770.
bringing all that.
That's actually one of the questions that I think is interesting, because I read some stuff in the paper, and then I also have heard people ask this question about the population. And that's true, that's why they do 15, 18-year population studies, because they don't want to build a building that's either too small or too big. And right now, we have a number of classes at the elementary level and at the middle school level that are 7 sections, 7 or 6 sections. And this school is built, this new school is built for 5 sections. So it's already accommodated for the decline in enrollment. So I just want to make sure everybody in the public knows that we're not recommending building a school for the current population. The population that we're building it for is the population that the trend is going down, and that's why there's 5 in each grade.
And the study wasn't a land use study. It was more,
Right.
they took into
Live births, live
yes.
births, yeah.
They don't take into account that we have a lot of developable land left in town. That build-out analysis shows that
That's
another
what worries me, that
12,000
the school
people,
be too small.
12,000 people could live here.
I understand. My thinking is, you add plus additional people, we just said another 75 parking spaces on traffic. I think we're a little close on that.
Well, but you have to remember that bringing in 2 grades doesn't necessarily mean bringing in more families, because a lot of families have kids in multiple schools.
but you,
We're talking traffic.
But they take into account that some of the additional traffic won't be there because it's still people who are coming to the building anyways. Okay. So one of the points I was going to make was that the study that Carl did at the middle high school was really on space issues. The company was just very gracious enough to do a preliminary look to give us some idea of what other issues that they saw, and really, he was even uncomfortable giving us a 3 to 5 million ballpark, because honestly, it's just a ballpark. I mean, that's the whole point of this study. It could be a lot less. I don't think it's going to be more. Is that correct? Please,
I have a question though. So we're gonna vote on replacing this school
Yes.
plus our $40,000 of the $80,000 in feasibility. And that could be done, and that could come back with a number of, say, 5 million. But then that would be voted on,
Yes.
right? And then that plan, so that could actually be voted again. So you could actually move the 6th grade out, right? So even though the feasibility study gets done, there's no commitment by the town to actually float another bond, right? So I heard somebody mention that we're still already paying off the current renovations to the high school, then we'll be paying off this school, and if we agree with that $5 million, we'll be paying off 2 bonds simultaneously for the middle high school, or not, if it gets defeated, but the $40,000 doesn't commit us to spending another $5 million, right?
I think it eventually will. That,
Well, it would have to come to a town vote, just like the
But it has to
feasibility
go to a
study you
town
just
vote.
did didn't commit the town to
That's
building,
correct.
to replacing this building, right?
Correct, that's
This
correct.
building could still, the replacement of this could still be voted down, right?
what does that mean? I'm a little bit confused in terms of the relationship where, so if the town says yes to funding the school and the 40,000 for feasibility, but says, so that we're linking the two together, what does that mean in terms of breaking ground on this project?
It will take a year for them to do the final schematic design and the cost estimates.
So,
But is it
a
dependent
year
on that other
from- a year
feasibility
from-
study being?
It would be about a year from now.
a year from November, or
Late summer.
Is it dependent on it?
So you'd be breaking ground.
If you assume
before
both
even
get
vote
passed.
On the high
Does
school.
this project wait until the high school feasibility project is completed?
Good question.
It will go forward because it's going to take a year, just approximately 10 months, I guess, to complete the schematic designs plus do all the cost estimates.
But I
Because
guess
they're
my
not
question
dependent
is-
on each other anymore.
Yeah, it's the same as
Like,
that.
Well-
okay, we vote on them, they're dependent now, but then they're independent projects.
They become independent projects, but MSBA has the right, if let's say the feasibility study comes up for a vote.
Yeah, see.
Right, we pass them now and
Right,
then we find out.
MSBA
that-
has the right to say, geez, we're gonna hold back until you
But I guess my
show
question,
some progress.
so my question was the same thing. We vote for this school, we vote for the feasibility study gets done, and then that comes up for a vote to do the high school. Suppose that gets defeated.
Right.
That doesn't matter for building this building, to replacing this building, because construction has already started, right?
No, the
It's
MS
actually gonna start in the spring.
The MSBA can say, you have to do this other project.
They could.
They can say, we're gonna give you $26 million, here's the feasibility. They can say, you don't spend that 2.5, you don't get this 26.
you haven't.
That hasn't happened yet, though.
No, but they can because they're
But they
co-joining
could.
them.
I mean, we're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. MSBA is saying, look, you know what, typically, as a town, Georgetown should be writing a statement of interest to MSBA saying, our high school needs work. And that's what we did for this school. And those are the proper channels that we really should be going through. But MSBA has said, you know what, we already saw it. We're letting you bypass writing the statement of interest. Let's go right to it. We know you need this work, so just do it. We're committing to you, we're gonna pay for half, so go ahead. Hey, they've never done that before. This is the first time they have ever
We're not
done that.
talking about 46 million, man. We're talking about 50 plus.
We're talking about the
Because we know the
46.
feasibility is gonna come back with something.
Yeah.
Per his
Right.
point.
It
So
will.
then,
It's gonna
then
come
if we
back
don't
with
come up with that other 5 million,
Right.
whatever, then this doesn't happen.
They
That's kind of a
may,
tricky
I'm not saying
situation.
they will.
Yeah, I think
I'm
we need to get more
saying-
information on it.
Right.
I don't think we have the answer. Right? I don't want to
Yeah.
get everybody all.
And you know what, they're
Wrapped
not
up.
giving
I'm
us
trying to
that
ask them.
information either,
Trying to
because we
convince
did
them.
ask.
I
So
think
we
that's
don't
all
ask
the
them.
information to have, is
Yes,
where
it
you're
is.
basically coupling the $5 million project.
But they're not
and
into
adding
it.
to that. and we're gonna get-
Well,
Because now you're really talking about coupling the two school builds.
It sounds like they're intentionally leaving it vague so that
Yeah.
it's their discretion
Yes.
to determine whether or not we are showing good faith.
That's
That's
correct.
correct. They've said all along they want to know whether
Yeah.
it's something the town really values and wants to do.
As much as we may not like it, if someone's throwing in half the money, they give it a voice.
Excuse me?
So as much as we may not like it, if you're throwing in half the money, you get a voice.
That's right.
That's a good
They do
point.
have a vote.
MSBA also attended a joint meeting of the school building committee, board of selectmen, and the school committee, because they wanted to get a feel for what the town's commitment was to all of our education, building and programs. That's why they're doing this. They were pleased with what they saw. They could tell that the town was committed to educating the kids. They understand that we feel very strongly about how we do that and where we do that. And that the town is doing everything they can to see that this happens. So that's why they're not gonna say yes, they're not gonna say no, like you said, they're leaving themselves open. We just don't wanna pull, again, I'm gonna say it the same way, we don't wanna pull the wool over anyone's eyes. We're being as upfront about everything as we can. Because we've been asked to do this by the town. You know, we're townspeople. We're not a committee that got together and said, let's build a new school. This committee is not like that.
No, I'd say at least 50% of the people on the committee were looking to renovate.
Yeah.
And
that's
I
true.
really think they were.
What do you think be if the article for this school that passed, but the other,
The feasibility study?
voted down?
It would be an impact, because that's what MSBA has already said.
The
They
project, the
expect to see
elementary
it.
project will happen.
Then why wouldn't you just bundle the two? Can you not bundle the two?
We
together?
can't bundle them together. They have to be two separate projects for funding purposes. And you know what,
Where
we're,
feasibility study is a ballot vote.
that's correct.
Say that again?
The feasibility study is not a ballot vote, it just has to pass a town. And I don't even know if it's 3/4 or 2/3. I don't know that research. All right, so what I'd like to, yes,
A couple other questions. The 770,000 or ballpark we spend for the study, that includes the schematic drawings that we're getting,
yes,
correct?
yes.
Now, so you can't pull the 5 other class subs to save $5 million. You're saying that by moving the grades back here, I know you said we were gonna save like 75 cars, but we're putting 3 grades back in here. You don't think that that's gonna add at least 150 more, cars in there?
Well,
Back on Elm Street?
You know what, I'm gonna let our professional explain how they figured that out.
Then my
Because
other
there
question
was-
is,
Okay.
did we only look at these locations?
Yes, and I'll tell you why.
Cool.
Because the previous building committees researched other land. They looked every place. They sent letters to people. They tried everything to find land. There was just nothing available to the town. That's the first thing. The other thing is, even if we did find other land, the town's responsible for purchasing that land at 100% of their own cost. So by building on land we already own, we're ahead of the game because MSBA would not have funded any of that money. So I'm gonna let Carl take over from this point. I'm sure you might have questions afterwards, but I'd like you to see exactly what we are talking about in terms of the project.
I'll be brief so we can spend more time on questions here, but I'm sure you want to see sort of where the status is before you need to vote, both at town meeting and at the ballot. So quickly, is it okay if I stand here? Can you see? You can see the steps that we went through to get here. Ellie recapped some of them, but basically there was a feasibility study includes both sort of studying things educationally and studying the physical building too. And we in the committee did both of those things with the administration and teachers and so forth. We developed a number of options, and that included both options for grades. Should it stay grades 2 through 5? Should it be grades 2 through 6, 1 through 6, K through 6? There were a lot of permutations there of options, as well as physical options. Or should we renovate the building? Should we add on to it? Should we demolish part of it and add on? Should we build all new? And if we build all new, where should it be on the site? So there were a number of options. And again, as Ellie mentioned, all along the way, the state, the Massachusetts School Building Authority was a partner in all of this. They have certain criteria that studies have to meet in order to be certified and sort of allowed to move on to the next stages. So at each step along the way, not only did we present it to the building committee, the school committee, selectmen, but also to the state to move to the next step. So as we said, we went through sort of a decision tree there that ultimately ended up with the recommendation, the so-called preferred option of grades K through 6 in a new school, and the new school be located in what's currently the wooded part of the site to the south of the existing building. We were then able to develop that option in more detail, some of the drawings you see here, and I'll show you tonight, to allow 2 different professional cost estimators to estimate the project construction costs. So we, as the architect, hired one firm, the owner's project manager, a separate independent firm, hired another cost estimator. The 2 reconciled, and so we have some degree of confidence in the estimates, and there are contingencies built in there too for unknowns and so forth. And then once all that information was compiled, we were able to submit it to the state in August, and then just a couple weeks ago at their October 3rd board meeting, the MSBA approved that submission. And prior to being, I should mention, prior to submitting it, the building committee approved it, the selectmen approved it, the school committee approved it as the preferred option. And it went in to get the MSBA's approval. So in essence, What they voted on was their share, their reimbursement of the total project cost. And now the clock starts ticking sort of from their vote. Each community has, I think it's 120 days to come up with the local approvals, in essence, for their share of the project cost. And so that's why your special town meeting and your vote is forthcoming here on October 25th, is it? Is that the right date? 29th. Yeah, that's 29th. And November 6th, 2 weeks from tonight, right, for the town meeting. And then the election on November 6th. Assuming those are positive votes, we would then move into and the high school is a positive vote too, the feasibility study, we would move into a period of further design development to develop the details, again, working with the building committee, with the school and the administrators, and then put together the actual plans and specifications that could go out to bid. And we would anticipate that the project would be bid sometime next summer, so that construction could start at the end of the summer, and then the eventual new school could open, as it shows, put that down there, in the fall of 2015, be ready for that school year. The sequence would be that the new school would be constructed while the existing school and fields stay in operation. I'll show you on the site plan, very minimal impact to the existing operation. And then once the new school is in place, and the roads and the parking to support that, then this building can be torn down and replaced with new athletic fields, basically, in this location, and just finishing off the site work as well. So that would continue a little bit beyond the fall of 2015, the final site work, but the new school would open for that school year. Here's the existing site, an aerial view for those who know, get oriented, Elm Street. Across the bottom, here's the curving driveway coming in. The existing building here is the dark gray roof. You can see the athletic fields and the faculty parking lot. The town owns all of this land here as well, the so-called wooded portion. And that's the part that ultimately we agreed upon being the site for the school. One thing you should understand, and for those who have walked in the woods there, you know it's not flat. It's rolling terrain back there, some ledge. There's a low spot or two as well, and as possible wetlands that we have to avoid. And down here to the east of the school is the actual Penn Brook, sort of a very low area, much below the elevation we're talking about here. But there are setbacks from that too. So in terms of buildable area, this is buildable area south of the site there. And then there's state land beyond. So here's the new site plan, and see if I can go backwards. If you keep in mind, there's the existing building. Right here, if you can imagine that circle, there's sort of a knoll of ledge outcropping. For those who are familiar with the school, on the as you're facing the front, on the right side, there's an access walkway, sidewalk. Right there, you can actually see the rock outcropping. That's part of a knoll, and if you keep that in mind, when we go to the next site, it's right there. So there's that same knoll. Here's the footprint of the existing building, which ultimately becomes a playing field. And then here is the T-shaped proposed new school, so that you can get oriented. The other way to get oriented too, again, if we go back, is sort of keep your eye on this faculty teachers parking lot here. As you come in the driveway, if you were to keep going straight into the woods, that's sort of where the new driveway would be. So that teacher's parking lot is right there. Here's the existing driveway. If you kept going straight into the woods, it becomes the new driveway. So those are two ways, if you want to go out there in the daytime and get oriented, as to try to visualize where the new school would be. And the other thing to notice is this little neck of land here, which the town owns as well. That would become the emergency driveway, the connection back to Elm Street. And again, it's purely for emergencies, would not be used day to day, although it could be used for pedestrians to access the site, to walk in from Elm Street. But other than that, it would only be used in emergencies. It would be gated, probably both at top and bottom, to keep out day-to-day traffic, but the police and fire department and emergency services would have access to those gates. But the overall layout here, again, is greatly driven not only by the educational desire in terms of how to shape the school, but also how to fit this piece of land, because it's not flat, and because not only is there, sort of this knoll here, a high spot, there's a low spot over here that has some wetland plants in it. When we say wetlands, if you were to walk out there today, it does not look like a swamp. You'd barely even know, only the botanists among us who could recognize the plants would know that that's even technically called wetlands. But it is protected, by the Conservation Commission. It's basically a low spot. And it's not a vernal pool, for those who are familiar with that, which has sort of another layer of protection. It's not one of those. But it does have a necessary setback around it, so we can't disturb any of the trees within, I think it's 75 feet or so of that wetland. So that's why you can see this circle here. But what we wanted to do is actually extend that undisturbed area to be as large as possible. Because again, one of the opportunities of building there is to really make this school feel like it's part of nature, like it is a school in the woods. And even though there's a lot of cars and a lot of pavement and driveways, we still want to work hard to site the school in a way that it fits that land very nicely, that the kids can go outside and make the woods part of the curriculum, that it's convenient for play areas and in a very sort of natural setting there. So as you approach, and you'd still use the same driveway coming in, but you can see how much longer that driveway is now. And that's what Ellie was referring to in terms of queuing up cars in the morning and particularly in the afternoon pickup, can accommodate many more cars than the current configuration allows. So even though the school is growing by a couple hundred children, the driveway is not only significantly longer, but there are more parking spaces as well for those parents who want to park and walk and pick up their child that way. So not everyone has to be sort of captured in that queue. You really have no options today because there are so few parking spaces. Virtually everyone's taken by the teachers or a few volunteers or staff. That you get in your car, you have to stay in your car until you pick up your kid and leave. Here there'll be more options. So not only can you, if you choose, come around the circle and have a very long driveway across the front of the building. That little red triangle is the main entrance. But there also will be available spaces in these lots for parking, for visitors, for parents during the day. The other opportunity we want to take advantage of with the new configuration was to separate buses too. And so you'll notice there's a new bus loop here that goes around this knoll right here. That driveway is basically restricted to buses only. No parents, no cars during the day. And so we can safely separate out the bus traffic from the parents' traffic. And again, for those who are familiar with the way it works today, it's not only a sort of awkward configuration, it's somewhat unsafe, that you've got cars and buses crossing. The pickup area is reasonably separated, but it's away from the school, unfortunately. Here we can get a bus pickup area that's, this other red triangle right off of the school, right here. So those children can come out this door, and the buses can be queued up here. And we can queue up 5 or 6 buses, not just 1 or 2 today. And hopefully, again, that's an operational issue as to how many buses there actually are. Right now, I believe there are like 3 buses, but 2 of them make a second run, Carol?
There are 5 buses, but 2 of them make a second run.
Right. We could actually get all 5 buses out there at once in the new school. Again, I know there are operational issues, but it's designed for that. It has that flexibility. One of the other things to keep in mind, as was mentioned, bringing 6th grade, bringing kindergarten and 1st grade here, there will be families who have children, multiple children rather, in school at the same time. So there's not a one-to-one correlation that every student is going to be driven by a parent to come here, and so there's not a proportional increase in the number of cars. There'll be more families with 1 or 2 or 3 children in the building at the same time, still in just 1 car. Hopefully, and that's part of our discussions we've had at other meetings here, we want to encourage more children to ride the bus for those who, that makes sense, and because it's a more efficient way, and obviously if we can encourage carpooling, if we can encourage pedestrian access or safe bike access. We know this is somewhat remote site, and there aren't going to be many children that's going to work for, but for those that do, we want to make it work, again, to further reduce the impact of cars. But as I say, we've not only lengthened the driveway, provided more parking, separated bus traffic, provided the emergency access, provided better pedestrian and bike access, so that in the end, we're confident that the traffic is going to be handled much better than it is today. Will not back up onto Elm Street like it does today at certain times. And I know the selectmen are also talking about, upgrades to Elm Street. That is independent of this project as well. Although we do plan on improving, the main driveway and handling any drainage issues that along that driveway, and improving the intersection of the driveway with Elm Street, make sure the sight lines work, make sure there are handicap crosswalks there. But our work and the work of this project is limited to just that intersection, not the length of Elm Street up and down there. And the selectmen may be talking about that in the future. Again, to get you oriented here on the building itself, it is a T-shaped building that's being proposed. You can see it stretches this way, which is basically north-south. North is to the left on this plan. And the T sort of represents the functional layout of the building, so that the front part of the building are the classrooms, and the back leg of the T is the cafeteria and gym, the large sort of common spaces there. We'll see in the floor plan in a minute, but it nicely allows the building to be operated after hours, like an evening meeting like this, that you could come in and have access directly to those spaces without going through any classroom areas there. It allows, as you'll see in the floor plan, there might be evening basketball use at the gym. Those children, those adults could actually enter directly into the gym, and there's a set of men's and women's rooms there. You can close off the entire rest of the building. So just that part of the building has to be operated as well. And again, that would be, using this entrance here where that red triangle is there directly. This is the gym volume back here. The other thing that this layout allows is, by saving large areas of trees, you'll see that a large portion of this building is looking out at trees and not at parking lots. The parking lots are kind of held to the corners of the building. So right here and over here. And we still want, the entrances to be convenient for teachers. So teachers are primarily parking in these two lots and would enter the ends of the building. They'd have cart access, and even if the doors are locked, the teachers could get in. And we put visitor parking, for daytime use right at where it says main entry. So there's visitor parking right along there, and they could enter directly in by that red triangle, and that's where the office is. And generally, the way the building would be operated is, after morning arrival time, all the doors would be locked. All visitors would be directed to use the visitor parking spaces and come in that main entrance. So they'd have to check in at the main office. And as we said, teachers could have access to the other doors. If they take their kids outside for a class, they can get back in, and the door can stay locked. So it's a very easy yet secure way to operate the building. And then in the back side of the building, there's opportunity for large playground. Right here, you can see where playground, this colored area is actually where a play structure would be, and it would be a rubberized surface, so it's very safe, spongy. If you fall, it's sort of shock absorbent. The rest of it would be paved play area for running around, playing basketball, hopscotch, those sorts of games. And yet, the building is not that far. Once the future plan is developed, the building's not that far from playing fields as well. Remember, this is the gym, so for gym class or for recess, kids would assemble here and just walk, this short walkway here, and once the building comes down, it's replaced basically with a full-size soccer field. The footprint of this building is about equivalent to a soccer field. So they have access to those fields as well, which is very nice. But again, as I mentioned, we keep the building fairly close to the woods on those other sides, so that we can make the building feel like it's nicely settled into the wooded site there. And you can also see from here how this, if you envision this as a construction site, you know, for a year and a half or 2 years, while kids are in school here, you can see by saving this knoll here, that construction activity is safely segregated from the ongoing school, and obviously doesn't impact the athletic fields at all. There will be some traffic coming in the driveway, and again, we've had a lot of experience in renovating existing schools, and one of the things that we recommended, we write into the specifications for the contractor who's going to build the project, is that generally we don't have to worry too much about morning arrival time because contractors get to work early, like 6:30, before teachers, before kids. But we prohibit them from having any deliveries during morning arrival time, so that we eliminate, you know, that conflict of traffic. You know, so that if morning arrival is, you know, 8:20 to 8:45, that's the peak. We prohibit the contractor from having any truck traffic or any deliveries at that time. And likewise, in the afternoon, we can prohibit them leaving the site at dismissal time.
What's his penalty if they do that?
Well, we can fine them. We have that ability. The same way if the project is delivered late and he doesn't meet the delivery deadline, we can fine him. So it can be a monetary penalty for him, and that gets his attention pretty quick. So that is possible in the program. So we can monitor that and prevent that, so that we, even though, as I said, they would be sharing that driveway, the entire construction site would be fenced in and gated off, so that it's segregated not only during the day but weekends or whatever. You don't get, you know, unintended kids or whoever getting in there. And it's a positive aspect for this choice of site versus if we were to build in the field over here. You can see the size of the building footprint and the parking that goes with it. It would take up this whole area virtually for construction, and the school is right there. So the school would not have had any green playing fields, nor would it have had any even hard surface play area for recess. They would have been hard pressed for those couple of years to, you know, conduct recess, you know, out in the driveways or in the gym, or they'd really be struggling there. So it's a positive location for that reason too.
Why would you use the emergency egress for construction traffic?
Primarily because it's so narrow. It's only about 30 feet wide, and to get a two-way road is 25 feet in and of itself, and you wouldn't have enough area to like do drainage and grading on the town's property to have a two-way road there.
Could you use it for a one-way?
Even one-way, because of the road, that if you've ever walked in there, and you can't walk in there, it's town property, it would take a significant amount of grading just to even level it out, you know, for a day-to-day access road. It just didn't make sense. And the other thing, you can't quite see here, maybe.
So they're not gonna level it
If I go
out.
back here, it's right here. There's a house right here, and it would be a major impact on that abutter, actually on these two abutters, to really have day-to-day traffic there on a very narrow piece of land that's not separated from their property. It's very close.
What about from 8:25 to 8:45, like you said?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's open, you know, all day long. So it was really felt that, and the impact on Elm Street would not have been, you know, that different by having a second driveway. It was really for emergency purposes, the desire to have a second access point there.
But that was worrisome to the Elm Street residents. And they came to a
Certainly,
number of meetings,
certainly,
and they were very, I think that was almost like not a concession, but it was definitely something that I think people listening to the argument on that side said, well, you know what, maybe that is a fair thing to just not subject them to that.
My understanding was it was gonna be for emergency use only, but it was gonna be a road, they're gonna be able to drive a vehicle.
You can drive a
They're
vehicle.
not gonna do this with a vehicle.
Well,
They're
a
gonna
fire,
get a truck up there.
a truck, fire
Big
engine, and police be a little more capable of handling those changes of grade. If we made it, you know, a day-to-day drive, the grades would be have to be a little bit flatter. So it's definitely going to be drivable, and it's going to be, you know, slightly graded. But we want to save as many trees. There's some nice stone walls along that too. And again, make it as natural as we
Why
can.
not get an emergency vehicle?
Right. Yeah, it'll be wide enough for an emergency vehicle. Yes,
In terms of the driveway that everybody will be using,
yes.
is that going to be widened at all? Because I see that you have the bus access loop, which is great. But it's still a big issue of you've got cars coming in, cars going out, and the bus tries to squeeze between the cars going in and out. I didn't know if there was going to be any widening of that.
Unfortunately, again, the amount of property that the town owns here, this road already was widened once about, I don't know, 20 years ago, I think, something like that from where it was originally designed. So it's kind of maxed out. It's right to the property line now. That's why there's a retaining wall as you come in on your right. There's already a retaining wall because they tried to make it as wide as possible, and they put the wall right on the property line. So it's really, you know, we want to keep a sidewalk for pedestrian access, so there's not much that can be done there. But we are going to be looking at, you know, picking up the drainage there. If we can, you know, widen it a couple feet, we'll try and do that. But again, it's I don't want to promise that. So, but again, the road is so long that, you know, hopefully, as we say, most of the time, the backup is not going to be extending that far. If you look at it, you know, the cars are going to start queuing up right here, all the way around to here. And, you know, and the bus loop takes off right here. So, you know, the buses can come in and then peel off, you know, before a majority of the cars are backed up there.
Noise factor of the building into the school, existing school.
Because you know, it's separated by this knoll a bit, a good deal of the construction noise is going to be buffered, you know, from there. It's hard to say that, you know, if those classrooms on that side of the building, if they had their windows open, they you know, might hear something at certain times. You know, the one thing that people always remark about is those OSHA required backup bells. You know, it's meant to be heard, right? So it's hard to block that out. That, you know, when there's earth moving, there might be some of that. But again, you know, the traffic, like you said, most of it's going to come before school and after school, the construction traffic for the workers. The ongoing construction noise is going to be buffered, you know, a fair amount by leaving the existing trees here and building on the other side of that knoll. So we don't think it'll be very disruptive to the ongoing school. Here's a diagram of the floor plan of the layouts, and the different colors indicate different functions here. But again, you can see the T-shaped building. So here's the front door down here. So this block of space right here is the administration area, right adjacent to the front door, and here's the lobby. And then that bus entrance, the second entrance, is over here by the gym and cafeteria. So you can see along the front of the building are all the classrooms, and that portion of the building is 3 stories tall over here.
How do you get to the gym? You have to walk to the cafeteria?
We'll show you, yes. The yellow color here sort of are the corridors. And the classrooms here are 3 stories. On this end of the building is the kindergarten. That's only 1-story building. And so it's nicely segregated from the upper grades, but equally, you know, accessible to the office, to the art and music spaces, to the cafeteria. There are access points there, and they have their own dedicated playground right off the end of the building as well. And so the cafeterias, kindergarten spaces rather, have their own wing there. Then the cafeteria is like this space very much, you know, with a raised stage. So it's known as a cafetorium because half the time or part of the time it acts as an auditorium. So this purple area is the stage right here. And the music room is adjacent to that, much like here. So it can also act as a backstage area. It's a nice arrangement. And you do pass by this edge of the cafeteria, much like this, in a way. That there's no tables set up there. It really is a walkway, and you get to the gym that way from the building.
So when there's
So-
EVs,
Yeah, the building can be operated in a couple different ways. The thing I mentioned about having direct access to the gym and only the gym, this door right here can be locked. So you come in this way, there's a men's and women's room, and there's the gym. And that's the extent of how far you can go in the building, and it's locked right at that point. There may be other times in the evening where, you know, you want to open the front door and let people pass through or use the cafeteria and the gym, or maybe like a meeting like tonight. You can come either way. You can come in this way, or come in this way to get to the cafeteria. And then there'd be doors at either side of the classroom wings to close off the classroom wings, so that the traffic doesn't go through there. And it's limited to just the central part of the building. All the support spaces are back here. So this is the kitchen and receiving area, some mechanical spaces back here. The service comes in the back off of a driveway here, off of the bus. And again, those deliveries would generally be scheduled off hours, so they're not happening during school time. So really, there's not much traffic. You know, there aren't cars circling the building at all. And that leaves this whole area here to be the playground, right off of the cafeteria, separated a bit from these classrooms and separated sort of vertically by grade too, so that the first floor elevation of the building is a bit above this area, so that these classrooms are above the playground here, so they won't be too disturbed by playing going on there. And there's opportunity to do some planting and trees here too, to further buffer that. And then the woods are right off the end of the building and back here as well. We'll show you some views of what that might look like. And the way, you might notice how these classrooms are joined in pods. That's basically for each grade, so that there are 5 classrooms, and then there are really 6 classrooms per grade, you'll notice. In each case, one of them may be a special, and then there are smaller spaces too, to support each classroom. So every grade grouping has not only full-size classrooms, they have smaller resource rooms, pull-out areas, special ed rooms, art and computer labs are located there as well. So, and then the boys and girls rooms are here, and teachers' rooms here. So on every floor, you have a teacher's room immediately adjacent to those classrooms. It's a nice resource. It's a way for teachers to collaborate. And then the boys and girls rooms are centrally located, so those children don't have to travel far to get to those facilities as well.
Is the building fully air conditioned?
It's not fully air conditioned because, again, being state funded, they don't support funding elementary schools fully air conditioned. Again, it's just their way of one sort of drawing a line on expenses that they can impose on every school in the state. You know, they do recognize high schools may be more fully utilized in the summer and therefore need air conditioning. But we do hope to have though is a system of dehumidification, so that in the summer it sort of takes the edge off. If it's 95 outside, we might not be able to get it down to 72, but we could get it down to 78 or something to be more comfortable and drier.
So the gym, the caf, and air
The
conditioning?
central parts of the building would be air conditioned. So the cafeteria, not the gym, the cafeteria, this music room here, and the administration area, and then above this, on the second floor, is the library. So again, the center part of the building would be air conditioned.
Why wouldn't the gym be AC? It's something that be used all summer long.
You can still use it all summer long, but you're going to sweat. The gym's for exercise.
Except for when you have Triple E and everybody comes into school to do things.
Well, then you'd use the cafeteria as a cooling center if you want to do that. But the gym, again, you can have natural ventilation there, you can have ceiling fans, but it's a large volume like this. Kids go in there to exercise, to run around, perspiring sort of part of the game there. It would be a big operating cost and not that often used if it were air conditioned.
What were you going to put in for dehumidification?
Basically, you put in a cooling coil into the system. It's just that the ductwork isn't sized the same as if you were doing full air conditioning. So you can't provide the volumes of air that you would for air conditioning, but you can provide chilled air, let's call it. We just don't want to deceive people into thinking it's full air conditioning. And we can get away with that with the MSBA. And it's not as high an operating cost. You're not moving as much air as you would in fully air conditioned situation.
What would the incremental cost to put AC I know the MSBA won't pay for it. What's the incremental cost to the town?
We hear anywhere, from $3 to $5 a square foot, and that's just to build it. to operate it, you
No,
know, is another big cost year round, so.
How big was the gym?
The gym is at 6,000 square feet. It's bigger than this one. It has, you know, proper boundary areas around a full-size basketball court. Has a little room for bleachers, but again, MSBA doesn't support putting bleachers into an elementary school gym. You know, they believe the gym is for students, even though they know the community uses it. It's not really meant to be spectator space, but you could get, you know, enough for a couple rows of bleachers. Well, it'll be actually larger than the high school one in terms of the safety areas around the court, both at the ends and on the sides. So it's better in that regard, but it'll only have a couple rows of bleachers. You can see up here that the classrooms basically repeat, 6 classrooms. You know, you can see these widened corridor areas too. Those are becoming more and more popular, more and more useful in schools today, as pull-out areas, as breakout areas, as teachers and administrators learn that, you know, that the most effective way to teach is not necessarily doing what I'm doing right now, standing and lecturing at kids who are sitting in fixed desks. You know, there's a lot more variety and diversity that goes on, and oftentimes you want, you know, to be able to support that and with different kinds of spaces. And so that's partly what these open areas are. They're right outside the classroom. There can actually be windows from the classroom to supervise those areas. So if there are children out there, you can see what's going on. And it gives you a little bit of flexibility, and it actually is kind of a clever way to get double use out of the corridor space that you need anyways, and you can use it for educational purposes.
Windows to the exterior operable?
They would be, yes. And one of the things that we're working on is having a system where when the temperature is right, there's a signal given that it's okay to open the windows. And when it's too humid and you're running, you know, the chilled air, you want to alert people to close the windows and keep them closed. And so that you get the best of both worlds. You're not paying unnecessary energy bills for heating or cooling going out the window, but you get as much natural ventilation as you can.
I think another reason the building committee didn't like the fact that the original design just showed a straight line block. So, while incorporated in the drawing, you can see some different angles. So
Yeah.
it did have an effect. If you just look at this, turning the corner of the driveway, you see this big long.
This is a big building. You know, bringing in that number of children here, the fact that we wanted to have a compact footprint also suggested it be 3 stories tall, which again is fairly tall for an elementary school. But you know, we are going up to 5th and 6th grades. There's no problem for those kids to walk stairs. But we didn't want the building to be, you know, a 300-foot long facade and look like the high school or something here. And so by putting these little angles in here, and Josh, you'll notice, you know, this part of the building is perfectly rectangular and economical to build, and as is this part. And really, the only wedge-shaped portion is right in there and right in there. But just by jogging that a little bit, it makes a big difference in your perception of the building. And also, it gives opportunities in the corridors. You know, like right here, you get that widened corridor effect that you can utilize. We are utilizing in the design. And you never have a place in the school where you're standing, you know, looking down a 200-foot long corridor with rooms on either side. It's broken up in scale because, you know, especially in the lower grades, we're talking about 1st and 2nd graders in here. It can be a bit overwhelming. And so that's why we tried to group the classrooms together. So, you know, if you're in 2nd grade, you're basically spending your day here and then going to the center of the building to the library or the cafeteria and so forth. You're not traveling the full length of the building necessarily. And it's a more kind of kid-friendly scale building. And I'll show you some 3-dimensional images that reinforce that. And then on the top floor, the 3rd floor, it really is just classrooms up here. So this would be the 5th and 6th grade. There are no other spaces up here. There's basically just, you know, stair at either end of the corridor. There's still the same teacher's room, the same boys and girls rooms in the middle. And again, a few special spaces as part of each grouping, but they're just classrooms at the upper level.
Operable
you know,
windows on the 3rd floor as well?
What's that?
Operable windows?
Operable windows, yes, throughout if you're thinking about problems, they have restrictors on them so they don't open so wide that there's a problem with things or children falling out of them. So you put restrictors on them so they don't open it too far. And they have screens to keep out insects. What's that? Not generally in the rooms. We don't need them. We'll provide enough ventilation. You know, without that, and the ceilings aren't high enough really. In these large spaces, we do have them in cafeteria and gym. We provide them. So here's again, sort of a three-dimensional view looking down on it, bird's eye view. You can start to appreciate the trees and the fact that as you drive up, you'll have a view of the school kind of on angle, which is nice again because we don't want to come straight onto a building that's overly long. So we want to give you sort of an edge view of it, and then you'll be able to see the front door. But then you drive around the trees and arrive at the front drop-off lane across the length of it. So here's the view sort of looking up the hill as you come, because the building will be somewhat higher. So
Can I ask you to go back 1 second?
This wing, I'm sorry?
Go back 1 second to where's the outbuilding for the grounds, for the fields? Where's the field house?
That would be way off this. If you look, here's the existing school, it's just off this slide. The existing fields are even further off.
Where's the field house? We're about to spend $50 million a building. Where's the place for the lawnmower and the stuff?
Well, there's two things. One, as part of this building, there's an outdoor equipment storage room. But for the groundskeeping equipment used for maintaining the fields, it would be an outbuilding, a shed located adjacent to the fields.
So it's part of this bill?
It's not literally part of the building, it's separate.
No, but...
The fee is.
No, but it's there. I didn't see a building or a shed or a building. Is it part of the... When this is done, we'll have an outbuilding.
We haven't designed it yet, but in terms of an outbuilding, we're talking about a shed. We're not talking about, a
Field house?
A three-car garage workshop. It's a shed for a lawn tractor and, groundskeeping equipment.
Have you seen the lawn tractor we just bought? It's
Not
pretty
enough for a
big.
pool.
So,
Within the building, we have another outdoor equipment storage room
Okay.
too, as part of this building.
Are the existing fields, the ones over there now, are those GA fields or those town fields, or is there a difference?
They're sort of both, as we understand it. They're part of school property, so in that sense,
So
they're under the
are
control
all
of the
those
school
fields
committee.
going away, or, because it's hard
They're
enough,
not being touched as part of this
so the
project.
current baseball, well, there's,
Everything stays the same over there.
so just you're adding fields where this current building is on?
That's correct. Yeah.
And is the approach obviously going to build new school, and then the following year, because I missed the beginning, maybe you laid out the schedule?
We did. Build a new school. When it's ready to be occupied, then you can tear this
And how long
down
is it going to take?
and replace it with
So
fields.
what's the time frame? Like you start,
If you start
Day
next
one.
summer, in the school year starting in the fall of 2015, you'd occupy the new building, tear this down, and build the fields here.
which is going to take another like a year probably, right?
And the fields, they probably will get them in the spring, but you gotta allow them to grow for 2 seasons before you really play on them. So it's probably, out there before the fields here would be ready to be used.
But we don't lose the current fields while all is going on. We don't lose the GA baseball field while it's all going on, right?
Those don't get touched by this project.
Carol, I have a question for you. When I'm looking at the playground area, are the kids going to be able to go over to the fields for recess? 'Cause I'm just thinking, like, the boys, they play football at recess, and I don't see any space, like, right there in the recess area for that. I'm wondering if they're going to be allowed to get over to the fields.
Here's-
But those fields won't be there for a while, so.
Oh, well, just for the first school year that the building's occupied, they won't be there. Once they're there, long term, these fields could be used at recess.
Right.
They're not that far from the existing building.
So they would have like one person go over to the fields and
Yeah,
one person
that's what
stay
they
there
said.
at the playground?
Right, obviously you have to supervise these different areas, but with 770 kids, you're gonna have more groupings than you do currently. So.
Excuse me, what's the difference of the size of the cafeteria, this one versus the?
Well, I can't recall exactly in terms of square footage, but the new cafeteria is sized to seat 1/3 of the population, so there'd be 3 lunch shifts, and the kitchen servery would be large enough to move that number of kids. through the lunch shift. Right now, really, the factor here is the servery is a little bit too small, a little bit too tight to have 3 lunch shifts here, so they have to go to 4 or even 5, just to give the kids enough time to eat and so forth. But the space is comparable to this, like I said, with kind of walkways on both sides. It doesn't have these columns in the middle. It would be open, and there'd be glass on both sides. Nice full-height storefront glass, looking out to the playground on one side, looking out to a courtyard on the other side there. In a high volume like this.
If all the school were to get together, where would they be able to go, Jim?
If you really wanted to get 770
Right.
kids together,
Well, they
you
have
could go in the
school-wide
gym.
meeting- They have school-wide meetings here.
You
We
could
have-
go in the gym and sit on the floor, right?
And what's the plan for furnishing? Does everything just go?
That's all part of the project cost. We'll get to that, yeah.
Well, the gym though, there wouldn't be a stage there with the gym, is there?
No.
No, but again, depending on what kind of presentation it is, nowadays you can have portable stages. They're like folding tables almost, with legs, and if you just need to get up a couple feet, that would work if you were just presenting, a oral presentation or somebody
Well, I'm
with a
just thinking
microphone.
like the school-wide meetings, they do performances all the time and everybody's in here.
500 kids in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have like plays, this is where they do their performances.
In the,
Spring play.
in the cafeteria, I forget what the population capacity is there. It's not quite 770 though. And, as we said, the school-wide meeting would happen in the gym. That's a larger space.
Well, but that doesn't work though, because we need to have a performance space for.
And the other thing you're missing is that
In a large
there's-
school, what would
there's-
happen is,
There's 770 kids, but there's 770 parents
right.
that go to a school-wide play.
And one thing you'll get used to, I guess, what will happen is on open school or back to school night or open house night, it may not work to have all grades at once. Or on performances, you may not be able to have just one performance. You'll have 2 performances. For school-wide meetings, you might have 2 meetings, the lower grades and the upper grades. Because now remember, the school right now is 2 through 5. That's kind of a nice cohort group. But when it goes K to 6, you got younger kids and older kids. You're going to be a lot of times you're going to want to separate them. And I think, again, in our experience, you'll find that there aren't as many instances when you literally need to get everyone together. And for parents' performances, again, you probably segregate it the same way. There'd be younger grades and older grades. There might be, if you had a chorus, there might be younger chorus and an older one, and they'd be separate performances for their parents, that sort of thing. So just to give you some 3D views, and again, these are preliminary. This is schematic design. As we said, when and if the project gets approved, we move forward. We'd be developing and spending a little more time on design details and so forth. But it's basically a masonry building, meaning brick and masonry materials, with some large glass areas. Fortunately, glass is getting better and better as an insulating material, and we love to use as much as we can to get natural light in the school. It really makes everyone feel like it's a bright, happy place to both teach and learn. Here's what the approach would look like as you come around. Here's that stand of trees that would remain, and this is the drop-off driveway. You can see that there's a flag way down there. That's the start of the drop-off. We haven't even got to the curve yet. Backing up there, and you can see the 3-story classroom building on the right, and then just a couple more. There's the front entrance. We want to use some familiar feeling elements, porches and roofs, but really the building is of such a scale, it's not going to feel like a house. It's not going to have a lot of slope roofs and dormers and things like that. It's a little bit larger than that, but we still want to make it friendly and scale appropriately, especially at the entrance point. Just a quick view, and again, these are preliminary. The interior, there'd be a main stair, because again, with a 3-story building, you get a lot of traffic coming in the front door. You want to immediately be able to get to your floor. There'd be an elevator in the building as well. There's the glass from the cafeteria out to the playground. Again, it's preliminary, but we want to just give you a feel for it. And then we were talking about those breakout spaces. At the end of the corridor, this is what the view could look like. So it's not just a blank wall, it's not just a little window, it's a full view of the forest beyond there that the kids would see every day as part of the school day. And outdoors, we could have, take advantage of some features like this amphitheater right next to the woods, and again, try to pull the nature into the curriculum of the school. Yes?
Did you say those breakout spaces are gonna extend up through the third floor for those
Yes.
classes? Okay, one of the slides just, I think, showed it.
Well, they're a little bit
Separate.
different. On the 5th and 6th grade, in the center of the ponds, they didn't have the same. They have them at the end of the corridors and at the center of the wing. So there is a little variety there. And again, that's on the exterior of the building, we're trying to keep the scale down. So there are these 2-story elements like bay windows that don't extend the full 3 stories of the building. There's a fact sheet that maybe you've seen. Has it been published in the paper yet?
There's a paper over the week, the George Shelmerick was.
That has more detail. I just want to hit on the big picture. The total project cost is $46 million plus $169,400, and that's fixed, and that includes everything basically. It's not just the hard cost of construction. It includes furnishings. Even though there's some things, if they're in good shape, we're going to keep them. But the furnishings budget is enough to fully furnish a new school, not only with furniture, chairs and desks, but computers and the servers and the things that go with that, including laptop carts that can be moved around to classrooms to furnish computer labs and so forth. So all that technology is part of the budget. It includes fees, design fees. It includes contingencies for unknowns. We might run into ledge out there. We've included that. An allowance for that. When tearing down this building, there may be some surprises. So we know there are going to be unknowns. We carry a contingency there, so those are and the related soft costs, as we say, of miscellaneous expenses as well as fees and so forth. Of that, as you may know, the state is reimbursing a significant percentage, $20 million, and so Georgetown shares the balance, the $25.8 million. And when you vote, the article may not reflect these numbers exactly, because the town has to vote to approve the entire project, has to vote to approve the $46 million, and the $20 million share from the MSBA is a reimbursement. But you do have to appropriate and vote for the full amount, and then the MSBA reimburses it. But the MSBA's number has been voted on. That's what they voted on at their October 3rd board meeting. So their grant is fixed, and it can't go up. So if bids come in over the budget and it exceeds even our contingencies, which we don't anticipate at all, but the MSBA's number is fixed. So we work very hard to stay within that throughout. And there will be at least 3 times 2, like 6 more cost estimates done before we actually go to bid. Again, because we do them, and then the owner's project manager does them independently again, so there's a check. And especially in these times, we know the economy's been bad for a while, and that was good for the construction industry. Bids were very competitive, but actually things are starting to pick up. There is some escalation affecting the construction trades, and by next summer it may be a little higher. So we've included some escalation in these numbers too, even though historically the last few years it's been very low. As we said, the last year, 6 months, it's picked up. So that's included in there. So. And then these calculations were done too, I guess by, I'm not sure exactly, bond counsel, helping Mike Farrell, to give you an idea of what that means to you as a voter. And again, it's based on these assumptions, a certain interest rate, a certain time period for the bond, and depending obviously on the value of your house, you can calculate the impact on you per year.
How many more custodians, like right now, 3 questions on feasibility. How many more custodians are we gonna need?
The school has done a budget for staffing the new building. That's a requirement to get this project approved.
Okay.
I don't know if Carol.
How many more people do we gotta hire, Carol? How many more people, like right now, we're about to approve this budget, but you now have to hire, how many more people for this building?
As a square footage.
Yeah, there's generally a rule of thumb. I don't know if it's 1 per 30,000 square feet.
This school, right now, we have 2 full-time
Right.
custodians by industry standards, level predicting.
Probably be one more
I'm
than.
predicting one,
Per shift.
maybe 1.5.
Yeah.
And what I would do, one thing I would know I would do, is we have a part-time custodian at Pearlie in the evening. I wouldn't need that, so I just redirect that over here. So then the question becomes, based on what we need, I anticipate we might hire one custodian.
What's
Now-
the heating cost difference between this
Well,
one versus that?
on a square foot basis, the heating costs will go down, but this building is about 96,000 square feet. This existing Pembroke school is something like, was it 65,000 square feet? So, we're like 1/3 bigger or more. So you can't anticipate your heating costs are gonna go down in that regard, but they're gonna go down on a per square foot basis.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, similarly works for electrical too. This, just to be upfront with you, a lot of people think, oh, we got a very efficient building. But again, it's bigger, and we're gonna have more outlets, we're gonna have more technology, and unfortunately, all these things get plugged in for now, and even if they have batteries, I guess that's a different kind of energy use. But we will have more efficient lights, and more efficient motors, and the HVAC equipment. But just because of the sort of density of technology, electrical use generally goes up in new projects. Also, in the existing school right now, the amount of ventilation you're providing doesn't meet the current standards. And so in the new school, we're going to be, using those more efficient fans, but we're going to be using them more. And so those factors all lead to, slightly higher electric costs.
Is that a LEED certified facility?
It will be. It will be.
LEED silver, LEED gold?
Silver is what we're shooting for.
Any green technology on the building?
There'll be all sorts of technology. There'll be
Like solar,
both-
geothermal?
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the
terms of
building?
instructional technology, first there'll be a wired network, hardwired, and a wireless network available so that, again, with these laptop carts, you could go around the school and every classroom could be a computer lab. Every classroom could get wireless access to the internet, in addition to having a certain number of, say, 4 or 5 hardwired computer drops in each classroom. But in terms of other technologies, we are looking at a rainwater capture system so that, a lot of the building is flat roofed with internal drains. That water will be collected into an underground cistern with a pump and filtered, be used to flush toilets in the building. So we're saving on using domestic water for that purpose.
How about
Of course,
solar?
there'd be all low flow fixtures as well.
Any solar?
Solar, there would be on the cafeteria roof, which would be like this. One shed of it is facing due south, which is wonderful. We plan to cover that with PV panels to generate electricity. High efficiency motors, well insulated envelope, which is, very important. We're trying to minimize runoff, not only for better stormwater management in general, but so we don't affect the neighbors. Right now, there's some, flow off the site during heavy rains that affect Elm Street abutters. We're gonna have, actually, when we're all said and done, we're gonna have less runoff in the future, even though it's a bigger building and more parking. And part of the pavement on the site, like the playground areas, even though it looks like bituminous pavement, it's actually pervious. The rainwater goes right through it, and there's a lot of stone underground that acts as a drainage area for that. So.
Are there any concerns with I just am sensitive from years past, but any concerns with flat roofs, and does that require any additional maintenance?
It doesn't. We shouldn't have to, shovel the roofs. They're all, the code has been upgraded significantly from when buildings of this vintage were built, and it takes into account things like drifting snow, where it can get very, deep and that sort of thing. So there's no structural concern. The building's going to be much sounder structurally than this building is. It not only, to absorb snow load, but also wind load and earthquake load that affects things sort of laterally. The building will be much stiffer and safer in that regard. And what was I going to say? It's safer too, just in terms of fire alarm, sprinklers, evacuation, all those sorts of things. So
But they shouldn't need to be shoveled.
shouldn't need to be shoveled. And again, there's no, we're not shedding snow off then either onto walkways and things. In a couple places that there are sloped roofs, we're going to be careful that they drain into landscaped areas, not into walkways.
What's the rationale for the solar panels on the south side? If the summertime is when the highest production is in the school, it's really not heavy use.
You can still put that power back in the grid and run your meter backwards.
So you have a net meter?
You can do that. Yep.
And is it just for the lead points or?
Well, it's both. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, there may be three things you could say. One, it saves energy. Two, it is for the lead points. Three, it's kind of an educational thing for the kids. In the entire building, we're going to try and spend a fair amount on signage and plaques and make a lot of these things visible to the kids in the school. Because otherwise it goes unseen. People don't know we have whatever rainwater collection if they don't see it. In a project recently, we actually left part of the wall exposed and put glass over it, labeled the pipes, so you could actually see the rainwater, being collected and being used, so to make it part of their education.
I saw on one of the previous charts, it looked like potential property tax increase based on the value of your home. Is that what that was?
Yeah.
And then the other gentleman asked about staffing the building. So do you expect to be able to cover the additional operating costs out of the existing town budgets, or do you anticipate having to do an override like we did last year?
Yeah, these costs too are all, part of the project costs, capital costs, and they would be part of your vote on November 6th to be excluded from 2.5. So there's a debt exclusion vote, for these amounts. It doesn't deal with operating costs, just the construction.
That's why I was wondering if that was the number, or that number plus another number.
No, that's the number for the exclusion.
Now,
So then I have another just follow-up question is people have mentioned that, oh geez, if you get a new building in town, it'll raise your property value. And if you're going to go to one of these meetings now, if you're looking for the town to vote in favor of it, do you actually have any documentation or anything that has shown that if the town invests in their school systems, their property value goes up some percentage, so that people may actually see a payback on their investment that would offset the increased cost like that?
You know what, on Saturday, the selectmen are going to be running a meeting Saturday morning at 10 o'clock at the high school, geared specifically for the financing questions. I will pass it on to Penn and see if we can get somebody who can maybe find some information on that to have it.
I know from having worked in other communities that there's some anecdotal evidence, a lot of it put together by the National Association of Realtors, because they deal in real estate values, that do support. I don't know exactly the variables they measure because it's a little bit tricky, but in communities that have built new schools recently and how it's affected the sales prices of properties, there definitely is a correlation. I don't know how scientific the evidence is.
Yeah, I just think that if there's data to support that claim, that it might be worthwhile to support the position. Otherwise, all you see is you present just the amount of money that has to come out of somebody's pocket, not their return on their investment when they decide to sell their house in Georgetown.
And in that regard too, the high school is part of that in the sense that having an accredited high school is all part of how a town deals with their schools and their educational system. So having it be on warning status is not great in that regard. Question back there, yes.
Carol. Again, maybe you guys covered earlier, but in that meeting, at least I would want to know what's happening to Pearlie. Is that building being converted to something else? Like, do we have that many preschoolers?
Yeah, well, every year we have a waiting list for preschools, and we have to turn people away. Or people want full-day programs, and they have to settle for one afternoon, because that's all. So our intention with the Pearlie School would be to expand that preschool program to be able to give everybody that wants an option to do that. We also have a lot of students who move into town or live in town that have early intervention, which means that they have special needs. And we are obligated by running preschool programs to accommodate all the students who have special needs. So we definitely would use the preschool kindergarten wing that was fairly new renovation in '96. We would use it for the preschool. Then part of freeing up some space at the middle high school is we have our current special ed operation, our office operation here, district operation, and our curriculum operation that runs out of the middle high school. So our intention would be to move those offices and those people who direct and their support staff over to Pearlie. So then we'd have all of the central office people in one location that would work. So we have the business office, curriculum, special education, and superintendent's office all in one location. It would also give us an opportunity to have some storage space because we really have no storage space. And so down in the basement where we now have art and music, we would not plan to use any classroom spaces for any of that. And then really what this project does allow for, and it really would be up to the town if we didn't have an immediate interest or use for it, would be the entire, the wing that heads down where the roof collapsed.
That's my other question.
So what's interesting now about that space is that we obviously repaired the roof.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, because there was some flooding while the roof was being repaired, basically all of those classrooms down there have now all got brand new tile floors, the carpets have all been removed, and the drop ceiling. So anything the town would want to do with Pearly building would be move-in condition. So a lot of people have been talking about, well, what if we looked at a senior center? The town might say, with 1,300 seniors, they don't have a senior center. It wouldn't cost the town very much money to move it there because it's basically, like I said, move-in condition, close to the downtown center. There's a lot of advantages to it. That's just one thing that could be used. They could also use it for expansion of town offices if they needed to. The one thing the town doesn't have right now is space. By doing this project at Pembroke, it would potentially create an opportunity for there to be some space in town to be able to maybe have some unmet needs that the town has identified. I remember sitting at a series of Saturday meetings that recently, since I've been here on visioning for the town, that selectmen brought in a facilitator. I don't know if any of you were at those meetings. But when I sit back and I think about, well, what were the things that were on that list? One of the things that was on the list is we want to have programs and services for our students, and thanks to the town's override, that really allowed us to keep those things intact. We want good assets for our buildings. And if you look at it, all of the buildings, the library's new, the public safety and the Peter's office, the highway, those have new roofs, right? And so really, in a very short time, Pearly, CPC's funds are going to pay for the upgrading of the historic part of Pearly next summer. So Pearly would be in really good shape. Pembroke, if this building goes through, would be in really good shape. And the middle high school with those renovations would alleviate the space. There would be still some gaps, but things that we could manage, like technology upgrades and things like that, we could handle that. So, and then the third thing people said is we want to take care of our seniors. So potentially, if the town saw that that was a good use, there's potential to do something there. So I think it's part of a long-term town strategy, not just something that benefits the schools. It's a town committee recommending a town project because basically it fits into the town's vision for asset management and making sure that we can serve our citizens in the way that the town wants to have served.
Yeah. Because Pearly is a historic building, there is a deed restriction built in.
Yeah.
That at all times, at least part of the building has to be used for town offices or educational purposes. So, I mean, there is some limits to what we can do with it.
Carol, question for you. In general construction, the average, and tell me if I'm wrong on my numbers, it's 0.4 to 0.8% of construction costs is the annual preventative maintenance charge. So we have a $46 million building. I think we all can agree that a lot of the problems in the schools are that you have not been given the budget to have preventative maintenance.
Right.
We're about to have an excess of $300,000 that we do not have in the line item for preventative maintenance for a 96,000 square foot facility. What are we going to do about that? I mean,
Well,
so are you going to come back to the town, which is good. I mean, you needed the money before. So let me state this. You didn't get the money to do the preventative maintenance. But now you're about to build a brand new 96,000 square foot facility that you don't have the budget for preventative maintenance.
Right.
What are we going to do?
Well, one of the things that I know we're still in discussion phase, and I don't know where it will go as a matter of fact, but, remember a while ago, the town actually voted to perhaps do a shared school town maintenance department. And the school committee hasn't voted to do that yet. That's under study. In fact, I go to meetings fairly regularly with the town's groups. And so I don't know, but maybe one of the things that if that came to fruition, then that would have to be something that the town would have to look at its resources as a whole.
But right now, I mean, you know the construction costs, it's usually that number.
Yeah.
we have to come up with 200 and something thousand minimum to maintain this building. It's not in a line item anywhere. What are we gonna do?
That's,
I mean, we're gonna build a new building and do what we did here.
Well, I don't know.
Stop
You can
maintaining
assume
it.
it's not in there. As
No,
I
next
said-
year. No, it's not in the budget. You're just doing construction cost.
Well,
Next
the building
year,
doesn't come online until 2015.
Yeah.
but we now have to, like, if you ever look at the little grassy knolls area, everyone here has cleaned those out because Carol didn't have the money. The filters don't work on the system because Carol doesn't have the money. She's juggling all these balls, and we're about to give her a 96,000, a 30% increase in the building, and we're not giving her the funds, but we're not planning for it. We're not saying, hey, we need another $200,000.
As part of the submission requirements for this project to get approved by the state, they did have to submit, the school district did have to submit a budget, a projected budget to show how they're gonna operate and maintain the school. And the MSBA does not want to invest in a community that's not going to operate and maintain. So they've got a line item in their budget already. I don't know if it's your figure. Remember, it's going to be a new school. It's not going to need as many repairs initially as this current school does, or even the high school does.
But it's 30% more, so it's an offset. You're still gonna need.
It's a bit larger, right?
Yeah.
Pearlie's going to be a bit smaller. I don't know exactly how you're going to maintain that, but
Yeah, the
so-
building doesn't change size, it just changed usage, so it's not because it gets smaller.
You said there is a budget that has been calculated to figure out what the actual increase in maintenance is. So maybe we can discuss that at the select
yeah,
meeting.
that's what I'll do. I was just gonna say, I'll grab that budget.
What happens if the school comes in either above or below budget?
Well, if it comes in above budget, again, we have some contingencies in there for variations. We're going to continually be doing estimating, and as we go, if we see, the next estimate we do 3-4 months from now shows, costs have gone up and our projections are up, we need to make some tough choices and scope and bring the scope back a little bit. We can't really, we're committed to building a building of a certain size to satisfy the program, but we may have to make some other so-called value engineering choices to reduce the quality of the building in places, the extent of some work, something. We make some hard choices so that we monitor that budget if it in fact does go up beyond our expectations. Because, as I said, the state won't give us any more money of their share, so it would be 100% Georgetown's money if it came in higher. But again, we're going to work to prevent that. If it comes in under, again, unfortunately, the MSBA plays it so that they don't lose either way. They reduce the total project cost and then take their reimbursement share. So their grant doesn't stay fixed. If the estimates come down, their grant comes down a bit too, proportionately. So, but I mean, ultimately, Georgetown still would save money if the project came in under. And likewise, it's not just at the time of bids, but there's a certain allowance for contingencies through the whole project. If we don't end up spending those, that's savings too. Just because you're voting the full amount with all those contingencies, if we make it through the project and we don't hit, the amount of unknowns that we thought, or escalation isn't as high, that money, could be returned. And you don't need to spend $46 million just because you borrowed $46 million.
Did I understand you correctly when you said there's gonna be a liquidated damages clause?
Generally there is. I mean, each town, it's their choice, but generally there is in projects like this. Schools have to open on time. It's very awkward, if you open in October, So, generally there is, and it's pretty significant, like thousands of dollars per day, so that it has teeth.
How many years is your company invested into this going forward?
What do you mean going forward?
When does your job end? At fall of 2015?
No, we stay with it all the way, not only through so-called substantial completion, but then there's a 1-year warranty period after that. We be with it through that whole period. So right before the warranty period ends, we will make an inspection of the building and collect any, outstanding issues in that regard. And then in addition to us, visiting the project during construction, the owner's project manager has someone here full-time, so-called clerk of the works, that's, watching it, making sure it's being, built to the standards of the plans and specs, and alerts us if anything's going awry and that sort of thing.
What's your track record for school buildings?
In what regard?
Cost,
Costs?
time?
Well, again, it's not so much us, it's sort of us in connection with cost estimators.
Yeah.
And again, because the economy is so cyclical, you know, unfortunately, their track record somewhat goes that way. You know, it's tough for them to you know, be 100% accurate. They're looking at their database, you know, they keep track of bids that, you know, went in today, so they know whatever plumbing costs per square foot, so that, you know, but they were still trying to project out a year from now. So, you know, there's some, you know, crystal ball needed to, it's not purely a science, it's a little bit of an art too. But generally, again, we're within, you know, a couple percent, and the contingents we have are more than that. So in that sense, we've had very few projects that have ever had to, you know, be rebid or, you know, be scaled back to the extent that, you know, they have to change or cancel the bid. And we do hundreds of schools in our career here. You know, DRA goes back, next year we're going to be celebrating our 90th year in business.
How about time? Completion?
Yeah, again, there you're at somewhat at the mercy of the contractors, and fortunately, a couple things have happened recently to help improve that situation, where the state has instituted a process of required pre-qualification of contractors. So, you know, you hear the story about having to go with the low bidder. Well, you still have to go with the low bidder, but you at least get to qualify the bid pool before you take the low bidder. So you can check their track record, their manpower, their ability to do a project of this size. So again, and with the liquidated damages clause, you have some teeth in it. So again, it's hard to say. I'm trying to think back in the last 10 years. There've been a few times where they postponed the start of school maybe a day or two, but haven't missed it by much.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Thanks
Again,
for your attention.
Saturday morning, over at the Georgetown Middle High School, before and after the meeting, there will be tours if you're interested in seeing, you know, what some of the obvious issues are at the middle high school. And the meeting will really focus on answering a lot of financial questions. Thank you very much for coming. Please let me know if you have any other questions. 10 a.m. Saturday. Yes.